welcome to VCV Rack Instruments and Effects. I'm your host, Dr. Lawrence W. Moore, and in this series, each episode, we're going to learn how to make different types of virtual instruments, sounds, sound types, and sound effects so that you can add them to your arsenal of either music making in music production or audio production for video, games, or multimedia in general. It's going to be an all-inclusive series, and I'm going to keep it in one big long playlist, so that way for the future people can go through and look through the different sound types and effect types that we make and pick out what things would be useful for them. If anyone is new to VCV Rack, it is free software that you can download. There are some features that are in the Pro version that you do have to buy, and there are some modules in that Pro version as well, and some of the developers, because it is a wide community of developers that develop for this software, some of them do have their modules for sale. We will be primarily focusing on those modules you can download for free so that there are no barriers for people in making these sounds. So VCV Rack will work on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So there are no barriers. If you want to make different types of sounds and stuff, this is the series for you. Also, if you are kind of new to synthesis or new to VCV Rack, I do have a series called Learn Synthesis with VCV Rack. You might want to start with Series 1, Episode 1. We look at how the software works and how to download it and add modules to it. And we also simultaneously learn some of the fundamental principles of synthesis. And as the series unfolds, we go on to newer and newer modules and explore them and see how they work. But in this series, I may not go into depth about each individual module, but rather we'll be focusing on making the type of sound that each episode is hoping to achieve. So in this very first episode, we're going to make the randomized computer beep sound that was common in sci-fi films and sci-fi TV shows, especially like in the 60s and 70s, kind of like a old school that kind of thing, although it'll sound better than what I can do. But in any case, we'll see how to make that type of sound, and I'll show you different ways in which you can vary it and customize it for your own needs and get different, shall we say, different flavors of that general sound type. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, here we are. I decided to start simple, and then I'll be adding some modules and tailoring the sound as we go. But just to give you a little general overview of what I had set up here. Basically, here's the heart of the sound production. It's just your regular old VCV VCO module using the sine wave on it, and we're going to hear the sound in a moment. It's going into a mixer because I will be adding more modules later, so I decided to use the mixer version. The mixer level right now is controlled by an on-off switch here. This switches from the RCM series of modules. They are free, and there are some very useful ones there. But basically, with this switch, I can turn it on and off. Basically, the sound is continuously running, and this is my way of turning it on and off. But I'll show you some ways of making it sound a little bit better. I wanted to start with a simpler layout and then add as we go. The randomization of the frequencies provided by the random module here. from VCV. Basically, what we have here is a trigger input where pulses are sent from this clock generator. This clock generator is from the VCO set of modules. They are also free. And so it's basically sending a clock signal. Even though this isn't necessarily meant to receive a clock signal, it works. Basically, you take the clock out, set your BPM here, beats per minute, and it keeps sending pulses with those beats. And then what happens is the random module generates a random voltage value that will come out any of these outputs here. And there's 7 of them. So I'm just using one right now. We'll be hooking up some others later to do more things as we tailor and customize the sound. And that's just going into the pitch input volts per octave here on the VCO. Now I'm going to turn the sound on again and kind of lower its level a little bit so I can talk over it. Right now I have the frequency of the there we go. I have the frequency of the VCO turned all the way down. So basically it's generating random frequencies throughout the frequency spectrum, or basically within the minimum and maximum frequency values that the oscillator can generate. So some of them are really high, some of them are really low. In fact, depending on what kind of speaker you're hearing this on, if it's a cell phone speaker or a built-in speaker on a laptop or something like that, you may not even hear some of the low frequencies coming out. In general, they're a little spread out. You can narrow it a bit by raising the frequencies. So basically the floor of the frequencies that come out will lift up like that. Now what happens there is you're limiting the range of frequencies a bit more, and they're really shifted more towards the higher frequency range, some middle range here, and you can over time hear a little bit of repetition. In computers, there is no such thing as truly random. Random numbers are basically achieved by long lists, a whole string of values or numbers that it goes to. And they're basically seemingly random, but it is really a list, and it's just going down this list. And it starts at what's called a seed. Now, since this patch is set up that this is running from when you start, whenever you turn it on, it's gonna sound different each time. You'd have to like listen through, open it, and turn it on at exactly the same time for it to sound the same each time. But in limiting the range this way, we are getting something that sounds a little bit samey. And some pitches hold longer. Like I heard one pitch there that was holding longer than the others anytime it got to it. That means that frequency number was repeated. And so this is not a great way of customizing your range of the frequencies. And so I'm going to add another module that will actually be a better way of doing that. About this wide, so let's try it now. Now I type in the word range usually to find this module, and it's the first one in the list for me. It's a VCV module, so it's with the, all the free VCV modules, and that's usually the first step when you install a VCV rack is install all the VCV brand of modules that are free, and you have a great starting point. What this is it takes an input right here, and we're going to send it our CD values, our voltage values in there, and we're going to hook it up to the pitch input on the VCO. Now what this gives us is some ways of kind of like governing the range. Now when I turn this on, we're going to hear a stable sound. Or no sound. Because it might be at a low frequency. What you need to do is turn the gain up. Now this gain usually means audio level or amplitude. In this case, it's not that. Oh, I also turned this down a lot. Yeah, I hear it's on a really low frequency and it's not changing. You need to basically allow for more change. This is not going to affect the amplitude because we're sending pitch values through it. This basically allows the different random values coming in to spread out more. Okay, now I'm still hearing a lot of really low ones that are like sub audio, and I mean, maybe you like it or something like that, that's fine, but I'm going for more of like that, you know, old sci-fi film type of sound. And so I'm going to raise up the minimum here. This is like how low a value can go. I'm still hearing some low ones, but they're not as low as they were. There we go. Now, at this point that I've kind of narrowed the range of values by raising like what the minimum voltage value could be, which directly affects pitch, meaning the lowest frequency that can be played. We hear one tone there repeating a lot and holding sometimes. In other words, it's come up again in successive order. That's because we've set that minimum value, so any frequencies that are randomly generated that go below that minimum end up being that minimum. So anytime a frequency comes up that would normally be below, it basically becomes that frequency. And so what happens is you hear that frequency more often because of that. What we can do is also narrow the maximum, because I hear some high frequencies that maybe are a little bit too high, you know, for the sound that I'm trying to make. So you hear that range there is pretty narrow. So now at the upper end of the frequencies we're allowing and the lower end of the frequencies that we're allowing, we're hearing those two pitches repeat or come up a lot, because anything above or below ends up being those pitches. So what you would do is just play with these knobs a little bit until you find the range you want. There is a way to deal with the repetition, or those tones coming up, those pitches coming up too often. And I'll show you that in a moment. Oops. So once again there, I was just listening for, you know, how low do I want it to be able to go and how high do I want it to be able to go. Now, we want it to sound a little bit more randomized than that. And what I'm going to do is take out another output from a second random outlet. So each time a random number comes from the top outlet governing the pitch, we will also be receiving from the second outlet another random number that we're going to have modulating frequency. A lot of times this FM input is used to either provide vibrato or FM synthesis in oscillating the frequency of the VCO. But if we turn this up, and I'll do that with the sound on, what we'll get is a little more variation, because each time a random frequency is selected for the oscillator, there's a random frequency for shifting that pitch too, because this is not an oscillator. It's just sending a value, and so it ends up just being a pitch shift. And what that means is there's less likelihood to get too much repetition. So let me turn this on, and then I'll turn the knob up. Right about there. There we go. Now, maybe, for example, when we're turning the sound on and off, we don't want it to just jump on and off. Well, there's a module for that. And we'll be using this module in a couple ways here, just to show you some of the options in customizing your sound here. I'm going to feed, well, first of all, when I disconnect this gate control here, this is essentially working like a gate that's closed right now. We would normally hear that thing play. I wanted to turn down the volume so we don't have to listen to it while I'm hooking this up. I'm going into the input of the process module, and then I'm going to go out the Slew output. I like to color code my cables for triggers and gates as green, and CV values as yellow. That's just my personal choice. Okay, so now I need to turn you back up, right about there. And then I'm going to turn this slew up a little bit. And what this provides is a ramp. So when this switch goes on, it's really sending a value 10. When it's down, it's sending a value 0, which is off when it comes to level over here. And then 10 basically puts the overall level of this mixer all the way up. And what this will do is ramp it up and then ramp it down when we turn it off. Okay, now that was a short ramp, so we're going to turn this up to about there. And there, that's a longer ramp. So let's turn it to about here. Maybe that's a little too long because I turned that thing off and it still isn't gone. So let me turn down the slew a little bit. Okay, now another thing I'm noticing is that sounds okay, but it sounds a little, even though it's random, it sounds a little too musical. The maximum BPM that we can get out of this clock is 300. And that equates to 2.5 pulses per second, which means random numbers are generated from both of these outlets 2.5 times per second. This clock generator from Sicovell also has divide and multiply options down here. And so what I'm going to do, take the clock output and move it to here. And what we can do here is you can right click and select the exact amount you want, or you can use this knob to select the amount you want. And you could either divide or you can multiply. Now divide would slow down, multiply would speed up. So I'm just going to use the dial because I'm just going to do it by ear and just hear something that I like. Yeah, that fade out tends to be a little long. But anyway, there we go. And so it looks like I'm multiplying by 4 there. And I don't know. I mean, it depends on what you're using it for and how you want it to sound. There, I'm liking 2. So that's what we're getting. Now, some other things that can be done. And this is something I'm just going to show as an option. Just as we use the slew over here to provide a ramp, we can do that with the pitch as well. And still there. Process module. And what we can do is take our main pitch output and put it in here and then go out the slew here. And what I'll do is I'll turn it on and gradually raise the slew so you can hear how this sounds. Now the pitches, the randomly generated, will ramp to one another, or just kind of like gradually move to one another, depending on how much you turn up the slew. At first, we're not going to hear any difference. So you hear there that there's a little bit of a sweep, like a, you know, in between each number that comes out and each pitch that gets played. But since we have 2 pitch factors here, I'm going to add a second to make it even smoother. And what I'll do is shift click this, shift left click. I'm going to hit Control C, it'll probably be Command C in Mac. Tap here and then hit Control V. And it basically copies the module with the same setting. So what I can do now is take this FM input and move the cable to there, and then take the slew out of here and go into FM there. Now let's see how that sounds. So anyway, that sounds pretty cool. Other things that might be of interest is maybe using a different waveform. In fact, I'll try a different module as our VCO in a moment. But right now, let's just hear as I switch from one waveform to another on the VCV VCO. That's a triangle wave. So in that waveform, there's more, well, there are actual harmonics, unlike the sine wave, basically overtones, harmonic overtones, that add some higher frequency brightness to each pitch that gets played. Now we're going to hear the square wave. This is going to sound less and less vintage, actually, as we go over. Well, actually, this is the sawtooth first. And here's the square. it's really a matter of taste as far as what you like, but the sine wave sounds the most, shall we say, old school, as the kids today like to say. So, what I'm going to do now is add a different module. Towards the end of Series 3 of Learn Synthesis with VCV Rack, I went over the Mega Tone module from KautenjaDSP. This models Sega sounds from Sega Master System, Sega Mega Drive, and the Sega Genesis. And what I'm going to do, we still have a thing off here. We're going to switch our audio cable to come out one of these channels. These are basically like 3 oscillators and then a noise generator. We're not going to use the noise generator, but we're going to see how it goes with using one of the tones from one of these oscillators. We do have a pitch input here, and to get the full range, we will want to turn this down. Now earlier I noticed that this has a different kind of range to it as far as how high and how low the frequencies could go than this VCO. So we might need to adjust our min and max settings here. But it does still, again, help to have the FM here to help vary the sound. Here it goes into mod, and that does mean frequency modulation there. So our audio is hooked up, our 2 inputs are hooked up, so we can turn it on. This one I can turn up a little bit more. It's more subdued. Now, I didn't turn up the mod dial here, so this will vary the pitches more as I turn it up. Somewhere in the middle. That upper pitch is repeating a lot. Maybe if I give it a little more breathing room. Now that seems to be a max to the oscillator itself. But one thing I noticed that I didn't send a min and max to the FM. But I don't think I need it because it sounds a little too narrowed. So let me turn down the min. Let me try another thing here. This knob is turning up the frequency modulation to be modulating above the original pitch. Let's turn it down. That's better. There we go. So as you see, you get quite a different tone out of this one. Now, another thing we can do is we have multiple oscillators here. Let's see if we can do multiples at the same time. But what I'm going to do that, we'll still use the same random generator. No, actually, we're going to use another one. We're not using this module anymore right now, so actually, let me just get rid of it and move this one up. Okay, now I'm going to use a second set of these. Hitting Control C, click in space, Control V. Because if we take random outputs from here, these other, well, we can try that first just to hear how it sounds. But these other outputs will basically be generating pitches at the same time that the first one is, because it's going on the same clock, triggering the generation of a random value. Now, let me set these about the same to give them a good range. And here we go. Mod. All right. This fader for channel 2 is up. So we should hear both of these oscillators right now, generating different frequencies at the same time. You could even mix them a little bit, although we could even try out what 3 would sound like, I guess, but I don't think I'm going to. What I'm going to do instead is use a different output here. Right now we're coming out of here where basically it's 2 times as fast as the BPM. Let's have a slower module or a slower random number generator here that will be basically be going at half the rate. Everything's hooked up there. And all the slews and everything involved. The last thing that we heard didn't have the slewing going on. Okay, I was just looking at it just to be sure. The first one's volts per octave, and then the second one will be mod right here. Okay. So let's hear that, where one oscillator is going at a slower rate than the other. Now what I'm going to do, after we turn this off, that's sounding less old school, you know, because this is definitely giving us more of a 90s sound and 90s video game sound. Oh, I was thinking, why not go for broke and add a third? I'm just moving that up because that is going to be the fastest. And I accidentally moved this over here. I got to tap to unselect. There we go. Move that over. That's going to be the fastest. This one is half the speed of that. And then we'll make one is like a quarter of the speed. And we're going to hear them simultaneously. Nope, you don't have to go up there. I had them selected. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do is copy these. Let's see again. Tap here. Whoa. I didn't mean to copy this stuff, so let me delete it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so I can be accurate with my cabling. We want to take the Slew outputs here. And to get that clicked, every episode at some point my mouse decides, well, I am not going to work for you. Oh, come on. Hold on, click in space. I think it was not doing it because something was selected, maybe. Oh, crying out loud. There we go. Sometimes you just need to move around a little bit more when you're zooming in. There we go, hook that up. And we'll hook this one up. Then comes the clock. Once again, we want to turn mod all the way down. And turn volts per octave all the way down. And then we have here green output here to trigger this. Okay, and now we just need to set this dial back. Red 2 means now we're going half the rate of the actual clock. We're 150 BPM. Let's turn it on and hear it. Okay, so we're getting less like an actual sound effect that's usable and more like just bizarre music. I do experimental music, but that is not going to be in my palette, at least. All right, so I'm deleting that. I'm deleting this. I'm going to go back to one more thing to try. Maybe not just one more, but I want to get rid of the slews and have them just jump from pitch to pitch rather than slew to them. Oh boy, mouse is giving me fits. Come on. Alrighty, there we go. So now our random numbers are coming out of here. For pitch. And then we can take this here. You know what? I don't think we even need this anymore because these oscillators have a more limited range than the VCO from VCV. Oh, almost got it. All right, we're going up to mod. Now we still have these dials set right. So let's hear what this simple setup sounds like. I'm going to go here. So it's faster. Now we're hearing two tones. So there's the one tone on its own. Although two tones could sound pretty interesting. Now these two tones, the way this module works, these two tones, basically our random pitch and frequency modulation are coming in and they're being carried over. So the difference here is I'm just changing the tuning of that, the pitch. So basically these oscillators are receiving the same values, except this one is shifted up. And then I'm going to shift this one all the way up and see what we get here. So basically they're harmonizing. Will you please? Come on, mouse, don't do this to me, will you? There we go. We just need to hook up its audio output so that we can hear it. Alrighty. Yeah, unfortunately, the frequency that's at the upper range of these oscillators gets repeated too much like that. So what I'm going to do is turn these down, not all the way down, so they are still shifted in pitch from each other. There we go, and just see. All right, so, you know, very video gamey. And what you can do is try all sorts of different oscillator modules and just see what you get. I'm going to delete that one because we've heard that. And I was thinking of trying one more. And then I'll also show you enveloping the sound. Trying to think, what is one of my favorites? I'm going to go with Audible Instruments, the Macro Oscillator here. And just give it a shot. It has some pretty neat sounds in it. And this would be more like what analog synthesizers, more like the analog synthesizers that they had in, you know, the older film studios and so forth. So I am going to put audio in. We do have FM here. And there's an FM input. Let's see if we need it. Oh. Maybe the frequency. That's coarse tuning here. I'm going to turn it down a little bit so I can talk, but just go through a few of these sounds. That's pretty cool there. Fold. there. That's sounding pretty cool. Now, if you're listening to headphones, you probably hear the snapping sound. And this is a great segue then for me to show you how to envelope the sound. If you get too much of that snapping sound, it's an artifact. Basically, the waveforms are shifting from one pitch to another so fast. They are... the jump is just too much, and it becomes, when it's not a gradual move over a certain amount of milliseconds, you get an artifact, a digital glitch sound, basically. So I am going to put an envelope on this. And earlier I tried the VCO ADSR. Once again, these are all free libraries. This is from Audible Instruments that models the mutable instruments modules, many of them. And this is from the VCO set. I've covered these in Series 2 of Learn Synthesis with Pure Data, if you want to see those libraries and some of the modules from them. But basically what I'm going to do is hook up a gate output here. Our mixer, quite fortunately, has a CV input for the gate of this channel, basically. This channel's level. And then this is the level of the overall mixer. So we still have our on-off switch to turn this on and off. But now we can shape the sound coming in. This module comes up with the attack, decay, sustain, release all the way down. One way of triggering this is to say, well, every time, well, here random values are coming out, so actually I'm not going to hook it up to these, because you hear that I barely hear some sound coming through. It's like affecting the level of the sound. Let's just have the clock. Can we hook up 2 here? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Ooh, that's pretty cool sound. Maybe not that loud. But basically what we need to do is have a little more time to the sound. So I'm going to raise up its attack a little bit. Raise up its release a little bit. That should be enough to hopefully get rid of artifacts. Now, the thing that's happening is new frequencies are coming fast. Let's put a little sustain into it. No. Keep the sustain down. I want a little bit of an attack and release to try and eliminate artifacts. I think some of what I'm hearing here are really high frequencies. So we might be best served putting our range control in here. That's actually not its name, but I always look for it by searching for range. Yeah, because SCL is less memorable. Let's hook this up to here. All right, we got to turn up the gain. Here, I didn't show this before, but you can essentially use this to kind of guide the range area. Let's say we like that but maybe it gets a little too high. So we're going to turn our max down. And this is a way that you can also get something to kind of like generate random numbers within a narrow area. We don't even need to raise the min. This is kind of like almost achieving that for us. Although I didn't turn chorus all the way down. This is the frequency knob basically for this module. So now we are getting lower pitches. Okay. But maybe we could give a minimum to that. Because we have the envelope now, there's enough separation between the tones that they don't sound like they're sustaining like they were before. But let's put a little more variation in here by hooking up the FM. So by using these tools, you can kind of coax things into the range that you want. I really like this sound better with the envelope on. If we go down with the frequency modulation, pretty interesting stuff. Because this is not going, because the FM's random numbers are not going through a range control here, that's how that FM is able to bend the pitch beyond the max and min set here. So let's do this. This will be our last thing. I appreciate you staying with me this long, those of you who have. And if you have some things to say about this, some feedback and comments, anything constructive, anything that helps people learn, and if you want to share some of your work with me and stuff like that, go right ahead. I'd like this to be a community-oriented oh, what am I doing? This goes here, and this goes, well, it can stay there, but I'll be organized and put it there. That narrowed it a bit because the gain here for the frequency modulation is not allowing for it to go wider. I like that. That's some cool stuff right there. But anyway, folks, thank you for joining me. Stay with me this long. Please just hit that like button. It does help me out immensely. I know you hear that a lot from YouTubers, but, you know, it's how YouTube keeps score, basically. So, basically, next time we'll be doing something else. But if you have any questions, or you make a random number generator, or computer beep sounds, or if there's any kind of like sci-fi effect sounds you're proud of and stuff and you want to tell me about, let me know in the comments section and we'll find a way to share your stuff. So until next time, take care and stay free.